Hello, listeners. This is Kodey Stauffer with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and we got another top 5 program for you today. So, talking about the top 5 tight ends in Colorado of the class of 2025. So, we looked through a bunch of seniors, myself, Simon, and Mason, and we used a new rubric that has weighted categories that makes for a lot more accurate of assessment here. And so we watched a handful of tight ends, pretty good tight end class this season for this class of 2025 here. And so we looked at a few things here. We have 4 categories that are graded out of 10. That is the frame, the versatility, the run blocking, and the hands categories. So that adds up to 40 points. And the other 60 points are made up of a handful of 5-point categories. We're talking pass blocking. We're talking straight line speed. We're talking acceleration, we're talking agility, we're talking contested catching, we're talking run after catch, we're talking strength, route running, that includes the route tree, vertical/jumping ability, elusiveness, like their ability to cut, tackle breaking, direct contact tackle shedding, and ball skills. Those are all the categories here. Like I said, it adds up to out of 100 here, and we've narrowed down our top 5 tight ends. All of these tight ends graded at above an average of 80 points because myself, Mason, and Coach V all give our own grades and reasonings here for each of these prospects. And then we average them out, and that's how our top 5 series is decided. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump in here, just like the rest of our top 5 series, and discuss starting at 5 and work our way down to 1. So our number 5 tight end here is down in Castle Rock here out of Castleview High School. That is Jackson Blanchard here, the 6'4", 230-pound, kind of traditional tight end, I would say, is the best way to describe him. Between all of us, he graded out to an 80.98, and I'm going to start with Coach V's grades here, where he has him graded at an 82.95. That was his 4th highest ranked tight end here. And his frame category, as well as mine and Mason's, are all going to be the same at an 8.6 for Simon and I and an 8.4 for Mason. He's got the build of a next level tight end. 6'4", good height, 230 pounds, good size as well. Simon likes his versatility. He graded that at an 8, which is the equivalent of like 3 stars. His run blocking, he gave a 7.8, so a high 2-star kind of value. Pass blocking, he gave a 3 here, which is kind of middle of the pack in terms of that. He gave his straight line speed of 4.1, acceleration of 4.3, agility of 4.2, and his contested catching of 4.35. So, huge fan of the athlete that is Jackson Blanchard, and a huge fan of kind of the things that a tight end is traditionally asked to do in terms of what he's got to get done and what he does for that team. 8.7 hands. That is kind of the minimum to make this list for Coach V of his top 5 tight ends. Run after catch, 4.3. Strength, 4.2. Route running, 4.3. Vertical, 4.2. Elusiveness, 4.1. Tackle breaking, 4.4. And ball skills, 4.4. So Coach V across the board sees the 3 stars for Jackson Blanchard. Like I said, he graded him at an 82.95. That is the highest of our 3 grades here. And, is definitely a fan of his game out of Castleview. Now, when we jump over to Mason here, he has him graded at an 80.75 here. He has his versatility in run blocking and pass blocking a little bit lower at 7.5, 7.8, and 3.1. He's also got his acceleration at a 3.8 and his route running at a 3.8. Those are some of the lower ones here. And Mason said, quote, great first step, not a lot of routes ran, might be because of play calling. Deep threat ability shown on senior highlight at 17 seconds, but needs to work on his speed and ability to cut, end quote. So you can kind of see that on his grades here with the 3.8 acceleration, with the 4 straight line speed, and with the route running that includes the route tree at an 3.8. But he was obviously a fan of some other things that he did, such as his tackle breaking, his ball skills, his vertical, and his run after catch. His run after catch being Mason's highest grade if you equate it out to a 10-point scale at 4.5 to a 9. And then his hands also graded at an 8.7. His contested catching at a 4.3 out of 5, which is like an 8.6. And, with the tackle breaking and ball skills, those are both at a 4.2, which is 8.4, which is very solid 3-star grading here. Like I said, Mason here with the 80.75. And finally, myself, I had a little bit of a lower score here at a 79.25 here. And some things that I think he could work on, his run blocking and versatility, I have graded at a 7.4 on both of those. His pass blocking, I did like a lot more than anybody else did. But, his hands, I did not grade them as high. There weren't catches that, blew my mind so much. He's graded at a 7.85. I still think that holds up very, very well compared to everyone else on this list. And it still puts him on the top 5 and has him graded as one of the better pass catchers in the state. His strength, I have graded at a 3.9, his vertical at a 3.8, and his elusiveness at a 3.7. I think that, his run blocking, I just think he's a little sloppy. I don't really love his hand placement, and he's usually a combo blocker is the other reason why his run blocking was graded a little bit lower for me. You don't really see him in one-on-one situations absolutely bodying or running over people that much. So I had to dink that down a little bit. Now I do kind of consider the screen block kind of a run block as well. So he does pretty good in space, and I think that's why he's a decent pass blocker, is that he's really patient. And his footwork is pretty good, and I'd argue that that's the tougher thing to teach in pass pro, but his hand placement in run or pass block and the need to finish blocks is also really needing to be there, I think. Now, as far as the other things that I do like from his game, I do like his route running, actually. I graded it at a 4.1, and that is the highest of any prospect here because he does not get bumped off his routes. I think that he sells a block into a wheel route very, very well. I think that if he ever does get bumped as he's running a lot of these drags through the middle of the field, he gets back onto his line very, very well. And overall, that makes him a very strong route runner. And I like his strength as well. I gave his strength a 3.9. I think he gets a good push. I think that his ability to maintain his routes also reflects his strength. But the best aspect of his game, in my opinion, is his kind of run after the catch ability and his lack of being able to be tackled. The very first play, he's literally just not tackleable. I have his tackle breaking graded the highest out of any of these prospects at a 4.35. That's similar to what Simon saw at a 4.4, and that's similar to what Mason saw at a 4.2. So he is going to bully some people, obviously 6'4", 230 pounds. I think he could even afford to gain like 5 more pounds on the college level and just absolutely dominate in the red zone and just being able to push people off of him. His agility is also pretty nice. He's a good run after the catch, like I said, at a 4.2. I also gave his run after the catch specifically a 4.1. So that's kind of seeing the field and just attacking the weaker spots of the defense. And overall, he was my 3rd highest graded tight end. I still think that he is a great prospect, and he's definitely a next level guy here. And yeah, that's what overall lands him at an 80.98 here as the kind of traditional play action tackle shedding big body target that is Jackson Blanchard here. Now, when we look at his Twitter here, which is always our best source for, trying to find out what recruiting is looking like, I know he's gotten plenty of interest from like D2 schools, and he's been working on his speed in the offseason as well. But, he's also getting those looks on the D1 level as well. So his offers as it stands from this tweet that was on December 7th, 2024 is CSU, Air Force, and Army being those, and also joined by Bryant University, that is an FCS school. And then he has D2 offers to CSU, Pueblo, and Mines. So I'm excited to see where he goes. Obviously, there's some military school influence here. I think that he matches those schemes as a tight end very, very well, honestly. But I could also see him doing very well in that CSU kind of look. And it's nice to see CSU looking inwards towards the state for opportunity. We've seen a great Colorado tight end succeed at CSU recently in Trey McBride, who is out of Fort Morgan. So I think that could be a very fun fit. But, no matter where he goes, I think that first year should definitely be a redshirt year and, just get stronger, leaner, and get into that college football kind of mindset, and get used to, kind of that workload as far as the education goes, which he's got a great GPA at a 3.75. So shout out there. And then, yeah, his speed also listed at a 4.64 on his Twitter, which makes for a pretty decent speed. But that is Jackson Blanchard. We're still going to wait to see where he goes, but, he's going to be a great fit for any of those programs. I think that they know exactly what they need, and Jackson Blanchard fits the bill, and that is why he is our number 5 tight end in the class of 2025. Now, moving on to our number 4 tight end here. This is, I think, the lowest classification that a tight end has come from on our lists, if I'm not mistaken here. But, it's still interesting nonetheless. But when you hear about his size and frame and his production and these stats, you're going to understand why he is so coveted here. And that is Aspen's very own Henry Hurd, the 6'4", 215-pound tight end. Once again, out of Aspen High School, kind of over in that western area in those mountain ski towns here. But he showed that the skiers here had weapons at their disposal over these past few years, where his size got him a lot of opportunities here and, provided that punch for Aspen to surprise some teams, I would say. So, that's and they are on the 2A level, by the way. So that's why I alluded to that. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about his stats here. I'm going to go ahead and open this one up. He was my 5th highest ranked tight end here, with some things jumping right off the page. His frame at an 8.3, his versatility at an 8.4, with his ability to line up on the outside as well. He caught a couple of screen passes that caught my eye. His run blocking I graded at an 8. So I was a fan of that. His contested catch is actually the highest rated that I have out of any of these receivers here at a 4.45, which translates to an 8.9 on a 10-point scale. His hands are at an 8. His vertical/jumping ability is at a 4.3. That is the second highest of my top 5. And his ball skills at a 4.45 are the best. He adjusts to the ball very, very well here. He's got good reaction time. He has definitely been targeted when he wasn't expecting to be targeted and caught the ball here. And he's just a jump ball nightmare. He sells vertical very, very well and is able to stop on a dime and come back to the football pretty well here. So, his route running kind of benefited from that a little bit. And he's too strong to be stopped by a hold as far as like defenders trying to slow him down. And, he's just got great size and is a red zone specialist, right? And, his versatility, like I said, you can line him up outside. He caught a couple of screen passes where he was able to show some run after the catch ability. And as far as, his blocking goes, his run blocking at an 8, which is the second highest on this list for me. He drives really well. He's very physical here. And he has a very explosive punch and plenty of pancakes here. But, at the same time, he doesn't always just completely blow them off the ball. Sometimes he'll get a little twist in and just kind of use his height to just push them down into the ground. And that's not going to work as much on the next level. So that's why it's still at an 8, is because I think there's going to be some things that could be refined in that sense. And then as far as his pass blocking goes, he is graded at a 3.45. I think that there's room there as far as, just being a bit more patient here. And as far as some other things that I wish he got to develop a little bit more, he doesn't really have the acceleration to win foot races. He doesn't have great straight line speed as far as catching the ball and getting upfield. He doesn't really have moxie or jukes or anything like that. So his work after the catch, I think, is going to be the biggest thing for me to see, for him to prove when he is on that next level. And I think something else is that his route tree was kind of horrible, honestly. They could have had more opportunities to use him in more creative ways, in my opinion here. So as far as things that were a lot lower for Henry Hurd that, kind of held him back and gave him an overall of a 76.4, were like his straight line speed, I gave it 3.45. His acceleration, I gave it 3.4. His agility, I gave a 3.5. His run after the catch, I gave a 3.05, which translates to a 6.1 out of 10. His route tree, I gave a 3 out of 5. His elusiveness, I gave a 3.1 out of 5. It's just, there's just a lot to be desired for him as a receiver after the catch. And then obviously, as far as frame goes, he is the lightest guy on this list. So while the 6'5" makes him, one of the taller guys, his weight is going to have to come around here, or he's going to just have to get faster at that height here. Over the past few years, he definitely was able to refine his run blocking a lot more this past year, which is a little bit of a shame that they didn't use him more as a receiver, with his best receiving years being his sophomore and junior years with 28 and 44 receptions respectively. But his junior year is what really caught our eye. 803 receiving yards, 13 receiving touchdowns. I mean, this guy was just a nightmare here. And all of those took a little bit of a dip as he was just primarily used a lot more as a blocker his senior year of high school. But, he's already got his opportunity on the next level here. So I'm excited to talk about that. He is committed to Brown. That is a D1 here. And he's been committed to them for a minute, I want to say. It looks like, it's a pinned tweet. Perfect. June 21st, 2024 here. So, Brown, that's a good university as far as education goes. So that is a huge win for him as well. And, he's obviously had a pretty good impact on the Colorado, scale here. And he's going to be joining a prestigious school at a time where they can start to participate in the playoffs. So that's an exciting time. But like I said, he has a lot to work on, I think, before he sees the field. Obviously, his frame and athleticism, just baseline, could get him opportunities earlier, but he's still a pretty raw prospect in my eyes here. But as far as the other guys here, they were way higher on Henry Hurd. Henry Hurd was actually graded as Mason's number 1 tight end and Coach V's number 2 tight end. I'm going to go through Coach V's analysis here. 8.4 frame, 9 versatility. He loves his ability to line up outside. 7.5 run blocking. Coach V kind of saw something similar to myself, I guess, here, as he has him rated as a tied for the lowest rated run blocker, and he is the lowest rated pass blocker of all these tight ends for Coach V, sitting at a 2 out of 5 here. And then his strength, he has graded at a 3.8, but Coach V likes his straight line speed and his acceleration at a 4.35 and a 4.4, his agility at a 4.6, his contested catching and hands at a 4.5 and 9. Those are the bread and butter. That is the highest contested catch, which I think it just was shown with his junior year volume, constantly being targeted and constantly getting that. His vertical and jumping ability has graded 4.3. His route running, he has graded at 4.5. He does have a couple of head fakes that he throws into his go routes and can sell that. But once again, myself, I just wasn't a huge fan of his route tree. His elusiveness, he has graded at 4.35, his tackle breaking 4.1, and his ball skills at a 4.5 for an overall grade of 83.65. When we go over to Mason's assessment here, 9 versatility, 8.8 hands, 4.7 contested catch, once again the highest grade out of any of the prospects, 4.5 agility, 4 strength, 4.5 run after catch, 4.3 route running, 4.6 vertical, 4 elusiveness, 4.1 tackle breaking, 4.5 ball skills here, with his lowest grades being run and pass blocking with a 7 and 2.2 here. Mason said, quote, "When in doubt, throw it up. Absolutely dominant deep ball receiver. If I'm his coach, I'm throwing the fade on first down in the red zone every time." Have a shout out to his GPA at a 4.5, showing the true definition of student athlete. He's a strong runner who knows how to get yak, end quote. So obviously, Coach V and Mason way higher on his run after catch ability. I think that the opportunities for him to do those were, more present his senior year, and his ability to shed a couple of tackles at his size were impressive. But I do think it's probably, in my opinion, the part of his game that needs the most growth. But that is exactly why we do these averages here. We get different perspectives here, and that is what lands Henry Hurd at an 81.02 total overall score at our number 4 tight end. He was only 0.01 points behind the number 3 guy, but obviously he's got his future set up. He's in a great spot heading over to Brown to play football and continue to enhance and show the kind of student and education he's capable of. That is Henry Hurd out of Aspen High School, our number 4 tight end in the class of 2025. Now, this next guy is actually the tallest member of this top 5 list here, or tied for the tallest, I should say here. And that is Brock Keck out of Pueblo West High School down south there. It's amazing what he was able to show between his abilities and the play calling. But he grades out at an 81.75 for Mason. He grades out at an 83.4 for Coach V, and he grades out at a 77.95 for myself. I'm going to open this up as he was my 4th ranked tight end, and I think that he was underutilized for sure, but he has really good hands. He has a nice route running as well, which I gave him a 4 in that category. That's the second highest out of anybody here. He lines up out wide the majority of the time, so I think that his blocking skills could be developed a lot more. And he's pretty good after the catch. He has good agility, especially at his height. And he's got some pretty all right film on the defensive side of the ball. So that kind of adds to his agility and his versatility a little bit. And, I like his potential a lot more than his potential is one of the highest on this list here. And so I'm going to explain that. His frame, I have graded at an 8.7. His versatility at an 8.1. Straight line speed, 4.25. I have him listed as the fastest guy, at least with in-game speed in mind. Acceleration, 4.2. That's one of the higher ones. Agility, 4.3. That's the second highest here. Contested catching, 4.25. That is one of the higher ones. That grades out to an 8.5 out of 10. That is as 3-star solid and proven as it gets. 8.7 hands. Those are actually the highest rated hands I have on this list here with some of the impressive catches that he makes. His run after the catch at a 4.15 is actually the highest here out of anybody. And like I said, his vertical, 4.45. I mean, it helps that he is literally 6'6", and he could definitely get up there, and that is one of the highest grades. That is actually the highest grade I have for anybody in that regard. And his elusiveness at a 4.2 is tied for the highest here. His tackle breaking at a 4.05 gets it done, and his ball skills at a 4.4 are the second highest only to Henry Hurd here. Meanwhile, I do think that as a blocker, he has some serious work to get done. He's a pretty sloppy run blocker. I have his run blocking graded in the absolute depths here. It was the lowest run blocking that I gave anybody in consideration for this list. And then I gave his pass blocking a 2. I actually have him graded as the lowest pass blocker in this class. So leaves a lot to be desired in those categories, just not as refined in my opinion, but still grades out to a 77.95 overall. And if we climb up the ladder here, we're going to find Mason next with the 81.75. And it says, quote, fast, strong hands, knows how to break down and block super well, lines up all over and can jump a lot of people overall and can outjump a lot of people overall. Very solid, end quote. So Mason's eyes here, he likes pass blocking at a 3. His run blocking he has graded at a 7.3. That is the second lowest out of anyone in consideration on his run blocking scale here. But frame, versatility, 8.6, 8.3 here, 8.6 hands. His vertical gave a 4.5. That was the second highest for Mason. His ball skills at a 4.2, his elusiveness at a 4.4 was actually the highest grade for Mason on any of the elusiveness grades. The 4.15 tackle breaking at a 5 was very strong as well, and his run after the catch at a 4.2 were all quite high. And then his agility at a 4.3 and his acceleration at a 4, straight line speed at a 4.2 adds up to like 8.2 out of 10 here. For just overall being an athlete is what Mason's opinion and what his statement reflects there. Simon here had him graded as his number 3 tight end in this class at an 83.4 here. He loves the frame and the versatility, obviously, both at an 8.5 and 8.7. The straight line speed, 4.4. That is the highest out of any tight end. His acceleration out of 4.3 is up there with the rest of these guys. His agility out of 4.3 is really high. His contested catch out of 4.35. His hands at a 9 are tied for the highest hands on Coach V's assessments. His run after the catch at a 4.4. His vertical at a 4.45 is the highest. So we all see eye to eye on his vertical jumping ability, and we all kind of see eye to eye on his blocking being his biggest area of improvement. Brock Keck was graded at a 7.5 for Coach V, which was tied for the lowest out of any of the top 5 prospects of this class of 2025. So we all see eye to eye as far as what he needs to work on and what his strengths are, just with varying scores across those categories here. But with all of our combined scores, he grades out to an 81.03. Like I said, that is only 0.01 higher than Henry Hurd here. So I love these extra categories that we have, and the rubrics that we have are top notch here and opens up those opportunities here. But this 6'6" absolute monster here is listed as a wide receiver on his Twitter, which I find to be very interesting here. I just don't know if his speed is really receiver level, so that's why we definitely assessed him as a tight end here. But when we look at some of his, at his Twitter here, it looks like he had a game day visit to CSU Pueblo. It looks like Northern Colorado made him a graphic. He's been offered by Hastings College, that is NAIA in Nebraska here. He's also been offered at the University of Tiffin, which I am not going to lie, I will have to look up to see where that's at. But he's also been offered by Buena Vista. So kind of looking at D2 kind of offers, NAIA kind of offers across the board here, but plenty of interest. It looks like he's also been offered by Minot State here. And, it looks like he's getting a lot of kind of clout for Northern Colorado as well. I like the upside with him being a Northern Colorado tight end, honestly, and think that there's plenty that, he can accomplish as he continues to kind of develop those skills here. Whether he wants to just be used as a as a red zone threat kind of tight end or just a wide receiver, honestly, who has some serious upside. Those are obviously options here. But, there's some movement here. But either way, it looks like his opportunity is probably going to come on the D2 level or FCS level at the high end. I think that this guy's worth taking a gamble on. I mean, the raw potential is, like I said, maybe arguably the highest out of any prospect that we evaluated in this class. So you have to give it a try. And if he goes on the D2 level, he's going to dominate. I think he could be an all-conference guy in a couple of years on the D2 level at either tight end or receiver, honestly, just with the potential mismatches that his size, frame, and athleticism pose. So that is our number 3 tight end of the class of 2025, Pueblo West's very own Brock Keck. And now we're on to the number 2 tight end in the class of 2025, and that is out of Loveland here / the CU commit, Zane DeSouza here, graded out at an 81.2 overall grade here, and that includes with Mason graded him at an 80.95, myself at an 80.85, and Coach V at an 81.9. So I'm going to take the reins on this one and talk about why he was my first officially 3-star graded prospect. Now, his frame, 6'6", 255 pounds. That is by far the best combination of size and height on this list. So I gave his frame a 9. Cut and dry. Pretty easy. And then I was very surprised watching his film at his versatility on offense as far as him being used in motion a lot. He was obviously being used as a decoy sometimes. He was being used to motion into a lead block. He would come across and do like a split zone kind of block kind of idea for some run game, and he would be a lead blocker for quarterback powers. He would also line up out wide, and he would run different routes. I was just very surprised. I thought that he might be a little underutilized, but, he showed that he can kind of do anything on the field that anyone asks him to. I also had him graded as the strongest prospect here at a 4.2, along with his tackle breaking at a 4.2 and his ball skills at a 4.3. I was impressed at his adjustment to the ball here. And he moves pretty well for his size. I gave his agility at a 4.2. I also thought he might just be lumbering here, but no, he's hard to bring down. He's a big body target. He's got pretty sweet hands. And, he's not the fastest guy, but he's got pretty good giddy up on his acceleration. So while his straight line speed at a 4 wasn't anything to really write home about, his acceleration at a 4.3 is actually the highest I have on this list because he just gets up to speed very, very fast. He's very explosive. His route tree was also a little bit bigger than I thought. Um, then yeah, I was just overall surprised again and again and again at this guy's freak athleticism, his catching over the middle, his ability to hold on to balls here. And I think that, he's got a lot of upside as far as a receiver here. Now, his route running isn't like super creative or necessarily like crisp. Sometimes he drifts on routes a lot. So his route running for me, I think, is a little bit of an area of improvement at a 3.8. And, like I said, he moves pretty well for his size, but his elusiveness, cuttability, I have at a 3.8. He could probably move a little bit better. And then his blocking, I was kind of surprised it was not better. I have him graded as the third best run blocker on this list at a 7.9, and his pass blocking at a 3.2. He just doesn't always engage the right guy. And I just don't think that his blocking IQ is as high as it probably should be. I think that he misidentifies a handful of the time. I think that his hand placement is a little inconsistent. He doesn't always finish blocks. When he does, it looks fantastic. But, he's not always fully engaged. He's not always initiating in the proper way. And I just don't think that he's always driving all the way through. Like, I think he could do it more consistently. So that's why his blocking grades were a little bit lower for me. And then his hands, over the course of the film, he started to catch with his body a little bit more, especially on stuff over the middle. So his hands were graded at a 7.7 for me. I still think that they're absolutely fine, and he's going to be okay. But, those are some areas that I think he could work on a little bit more. Now, if we pan over to Simon here, he had him graded at an 81.9 here. With the frame and with the run blocking, both graded really high at a 9 and an 8.8. He likes his pass blocking. He likes his straight line speed and acceleration. His straight line speed and acceleration actually exact same grades as me at a 4 and 4.3. He likes his contested catch at a 4.3. His hands at an 8.7. His run after catch at a 4.1. His strength at a 4.35, which is the highest of anyone in Simon's top 5. And Zane DeSosa was his 5th highest rated tight end. But his route running, he did have graded a little low at a 3.8. His elusiveness, he had graded at a 3. And his tackle breaking, he was not nearly as impressed with, graded at a 3.5. And, to be fair, at 6'6", 255, I guess that, you could throw in a couple more tackles shed there. And Mason kind of thought the same thing. 3.2 tackle breaking, 3 elusiveness here, 3.9 route running. So we're seeing very eye to eye on a lot of those things. But once again, loves his acceleration at a 4.3. He's a huge fan of his run blocking at 8.6. His pass blocking at a 4. Contested catch, 4. Hands, 8.6. Strength, 4.4. Mason has him graded as the strongest tight end that is on our top 5 list. So, and his ball skills, he also graded at a 4.45, which grades out to like an 8.9. Mason said, quote, good hands and lines up all over, making him tough to cover. Solid run blocker, but needs work on keeping his hands inside. Or solid run blocker, but needs to work on keeping his hands inside. Solid footwork, but rounds his routes at times. And into a huge variety of routes ran by this guy, end quote. So Mason, he says a lot of the similar things that I kind of talked about here. I definitely had his run blocking graded the lowest, and I think it was mainly the inconsistency. But as far as where we all stand on his run blocking, we still have him graded in the top half of tight ends in run blocking here, if not higher than most. So, Coach V, myself, Simon, we all love to see that. And like I said a little bit earlier on a spoiler type beat, Zane is already committed to play for Dion at CU. So that is really exciting, honestly. And, it's cool to see an in-state guy go to CU. And it's interesting what they could definitely do with him as a versatile blocking tight end who did block all over the place and will continue to kind of be a potential weapon in that regard, on top of being a 6'6" target. That's going to make whoever wins the quarterback job's life a lot easier coming into Boulder. And, for him, it's not a huge change of scenery. He's been around here. He's from Loveland, obviously. He travels to work out with 6-0. So, he's got that sense of familiarity. It's not going to be a huge change of pace for him. So I think he'll be able to settle in real nice focus on the football aspect of things and just get it done on the gridiron here. His overall grade was at an 81.2, so that was 0.17 higher than Brock and 0.18 higher than Henry, and just a couple points below our number one guy. But that is Zane DeSouza, the future buff out of Loveland, as our number 2 tight end in the class of 2025. Now, before we get into our number 1 guy, there are a few honorable mentions as far as some players that we took a look at or unfortunately weren't able to evaluate. Dom Henning just had, I don't know if he got injured or something like that, but we were really looking forward to watching his film after watching his junior year film, but unfortunately just didn't have the film to be graded for us in this senior year since you got to play a certain amount of games. Trent Slade out of Chaparral was somebody on our watch list. Parker Dowdy out of Brighton was somebody on our watch list. And then, we did take a look at the 6'4", 215-pound Camden Cottrell out of Horizon. He was one of the other guys in consideration on the list. And then Xander Awansky out of Mesa Ridge, who had himself a very productive season on their productive year. So those are the honorable mentions of the tight end group. And then just as a reminder, our number 5 tight end was Jackson Blanchard out of Castleview. Our number 4 tight end is Henry Hurd out of Aspen. Our number 3 tight end is Brock Keck out of Pueblo West. And our number 2 tight end is Zane DeSouza out of Loveland. But that leads us to our number 1 tight end. And this was almost unanimous across myself, Mason, and Coach V. And that is Burke Eisman out of Frederick High School, the 6'3", 235-pound warrior who was an absolute stud and the number 1 receiving target for one of the best quarterbacks in the state this past season. So when we look at Burke Eisman here, I'm going to start off with Mason since he had the lowest grade for him at an 82.95, his second favorite tight end, but still plenty to say as he says, quote, great frame and lines up not only at tight end but slot. Fast feet. He rounds his routes. The third play of his Monarch film commits a bit of a penalty before his catch with an illegal block downfield, but definitely fun to watch and could use some work. So those were his end quote. That was his words. But overall, these grades reflect a very renowned prospect. 8 frame, 8.4 versatility, 8 run blocking, 4.1 pass blocking, 4 speed, 4.3 acceleration, 4.5 agility, 4.5 contested catch, 8.5 hands, 4.6 run after catch, 3.8 strength, so one of the things that Mason obviously wants him to work on a little bit, 4 route running, 4 vertical, 3.8 elusiveness, 4.2 tackle breaking, and 4.25 ball skills. Like I said, adds up to an 82.95, and his route running, he runs probably the most routes out of anybody on this list, so that is why despite Mason commenting on the rounding of routes, it still adds up to a 4 because the route tree is included, and this guy runs everything that you could want and more. And then Mason has some 4-star grades for him with the 4.5 agility and the 4.5 contested catch. Those would grade out to a 9 out of 10. The 4.6 run after catch would grade out to a 9.2 out of 10. So obviously the 4-star upside is what's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for Mason on this evaluation here. Now, myself here, I love his catch in traffic. He's got some nice hands. He's got some nice blocks. And, he's big and strong. He blocks in space well. He's used in the slot, like Mason says. And he's speedy enough to beat secondary players, which is kind of crazy. He has a couple of wiggles and head jabs and nods on his routes here. I don't think he creates as much separation as he potentially could with just a few other kind of footwork things. But I still have his route running graded very, very high. He runs, plenty of routes. And, even against cornerbacks, he's pretty good and having little maneuvers as well. He's an absolute nightmare in one-on-one, and he takes care of his assignments in blocking. He's just really solid, and his route running and tree will continue to be developed. Personally, I kind of wish that he had more option routes kind of readily available because I think he's that caliber of player. He also does, as Mason alluded to, drift a little bit on his crossers or his outs. But, that was my lowest grade at a 3.75, which equates to a 7.5 out of 10, by the way, which is still easily a 2-star strength. But everything else I was very impressed by. His run after the catch, His vertical and acceleration all graded out to a 4 out of 5 for me. He got a 4.1 out of strength, pass blocking, 4.2 on elusiveness and tackle breaking, 4.3 on ball skills. And, I continue to climb through 4.35 on contested catch, 4.4 on agility, and 4.15 on straight line speed. So out of the categories of 5, everything graded out to a 3-star outside of route tree running, and they were all pretty solid 3 stars. And then his categories out of 10, he got very high marks for me. 8.4 frame, 8.2 versatility, very versatile player, 8.6 run blocking. He's somebody who I can trust to take care of an assignment one-on-one consistently against edge players, against linebackers, getting out in space, peeling off of his double teams at the appropriate time, identifying the right guy. He is a very smart blocker. I think he's one of the smartest blockers in this class. And his 8.5 hands were the second highest grade of hands that I gave any tight end here. As for Coach V here, he graded him at an 85.25, so him and I both had Burke as our number 1 tight end prospect, and Coach V's lowest grade was his elusiveness at a 4. Everything else, flying colors, even that is pretty legit, but vertical, strength, both at a 4.1 out of 5. His pass blocking at a 4.15 out of 5. His straight line speed at a 4.25 out of 5. Then you start looking at things that are knocking on that solid 3-star heading into that 4-star territory, like his route running at a 4.3, his acceleration and straight line speed at a 4.4 and 4.25 respectively, his contested catch at a 4.4, his ball skills at a 4.4, knocking on that 8.8 out of 10 door, but it's his agility that blows the doors off here for Coach V. 4.7 agility, that grades out to a 9.4 agility, and then combined with the 8.7 hands, there is a lot to like about Burke Eisman, the prospect. His ability to be used on the outside, on the slot, inside at tight end. He even has some snaps as far as like an H-back goes, and he could like pull inside as well. He is just the most well-rounded tight end prospect in this class of 2025, and that is exactly why he's our number 1 guy, and by a more decent margin than most of the other guys who made this list. I mean, he grades out at an overall of an 83.82. That is more than 2 points higher than the next guy just because of his versatility and just excellence in a ton of different categories here. And he is going to be playing football on the next level here. He is committed to Colorado School of Mines, which is a huge pickup. I honestly think that for a D2 to get a talent of this caliber is absolutely massive, and he's going to do everything that they like to do and more as far as just when he gets on the field, he is never going to leave the field, I feel like. He's somebody that you don't have to sub out in terms of like a wide receiver for like catching or speed concerns or agility concerns just because of his upside there. He's not a tight end that you have to sub off if you need to ask him to block because he is smart, he does get it, and he does take care of business. So, Burke here, he is just the complete package, and that is why between myself and Coach V having him at 1 and Mason having him at 2, that makes him the number 1 tight end in the class of 2025, and he's somebody who we've been able to have conversations with. His season with Mile High Prep, which shout out to the Prep Super League, I definitely think helped grow him as a route runner and help refine his skills. And then as far as the trust that he was able to earn in that Frederick offense from his quarterback, from his coordinator, and everybody to, allow him to be a guy who just opens up the entire field for everybody else and himself, you can't really be mad at what he's been able to accomplish. And so, we're rooting for him. We're very excited to see where his career goes, and we're very proud and honored to call him our number 1 tight end of the class of 2025. And so just as a reminder, our number 5 tight end was Jackson Blanchard, the uncommitted tight end out of Castleview High School. Our number 4 tight end is Henry Hurd out of Aspen and heading to Brown University. Our number 3 tight end was Brock Keck out of Pueblo West, currently uncommitted. Our number 2 tight end is the CU commit out of Loveland, Zane DeSouza. And our number 1 tight end is the engineer heading to Colorado School of Mines out of Frederick High School, Burke Eisman. Burke here graded at an overall 83.82. Zane graded at an 81.2. Brock graded at an 81.03. Henry graded at an 81.02. And Jackson Blanchard graded at an 80.98. Shout out to the other guys who were honorable mentions in Xander Owanski, Camden Cottrell, and a couple of those other tight ends that got it done this past season. Now, talking about other guys who got it done this past season, this is just one of many top 5 episodes that we have made. This is our longest running series on the podcast, and our rubrics and evaluations have only continued to get better. So please double back for the other positions that we've already done. That includes safeties, linebackers, running backs, and a couple of others, wide receivers as well. That was a great class this year. And stay tuned for some more top 5 lists that are coming out. It's going to be talking about offensive tackles, edge rushers, quarterbacks, and just a ton of talent that the state of Colorado has to offer. We're so excited to be talking about Colorado athletes and continue to put them on in the best ways that we know how. And you can continue to listen to those evaluations anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether that's Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all of those, as well as YouTube, where you can subscribe to us and know whenever we have new episodes coming. We also will be having all of those reminders for those episodes coming out on social media, whether that's Instagram at Playmakers Corner, whether that's Twitter at Playmaker Corner /X, and then also Facebook. We're on Facebook, Playmakers Corner as well. Follow us on all of those. Turn on notifications anywhere that you listen to podcasts so you know when we have new episodes coming out. I have been your host for this episode, Kodey Stauffer, joined by the evaluations of Coach V and Mazen Austin, signing off. Peace.